Diversity management is a competency that all managers and leaders need. Diversity challenges is a universal struggle that all managers and leaders face, regardless of the company and the culture that you are working in. Diversity management training leads to managers and leaders making better decisions and understanding the differences of those around us. Jesse Jackson said, "Inclusion is not a matter of political correctness. It is the key to growth." With that, let's start with a quote. "It is time for parents to teach young people early on that in diversity there is beauty and there is strength," by Maya Angelou. For today's lesson, we are going to look at your guide to diversity management. Our objectives will include future leadership and transformational roles, leading a multi-generational environment, acquiring a multicultural mindset. Before we jump into the different topics, I want us all to look at this inspirational leadership video before we look at these difficult topics. With that, let's have a look.
We all want to be successful in life, but you must ask yourself, are you a follower or are you a leader? What I mean by this is followers are the ones that wait for direction and are told where to go in life. Leaders, on the other hand, are in front of the line, not focused on what's being said, but focused on what's getting done. You have to be able to create a plan, find your purpose, and in the process, keep pursuing your goals, day in and day out, till you know you can't be stopped. Never be satisfied with satisfaction or blending in with society, but having the desire to leave a lasting impression to be remembered and admired. This will make you one of a kind. When someone says it can't be done, and the first thing that comes to your mind is how it can, you will find others using fear as a reason why they can't reach their full potential, simply because they are afraid of failing, not understanding this is a process of being successful, to be able to overcome your downfalls, which in return will elevate you past limitations you never thought you could surpass. That's determination. That's motivation. That's the victory inside yourself, proving them wrong, never using fear as an excuse, just as their opinion. A leader is able to stare fear in the face and say, "You are yesterday's problem." So, if you want more out of life, go out and get it. Start constantly thinking of new avenues and different ways to reach what many will say is impossible, because you are possible. A leader will find that inner strength that will push them on their good days and push them even harder on their bad ones. Who do you think will be there to tell you keep pushing? You're almost there, don't give up. When it's your vision of success, remember, no one has the same drive you have inside. You will have people in your life saying you are wasting your time. Don't complain about it, be about it. You are not just an average person who will give in to life's hardships, settling for less, when you have the perseverance to accomplish so much more. You are in control of your life, so there is no need to break. Once you can figure out this formula, the path will become easier, but the key word is easier. Because if anything is easy in your life, it simply means you're not trying hard enough. When you think you're working hard, work harder. Keep moving forward and become stronger in the process, and become a leader, but a leader that doesn't create more followers, but more leaders.
With that video in place, we need to be the leaders that our companies and our employees need. So let's look at topic number 1, future leadership and transformational roles. Did you know that vision is the art of seeing the invisible? By Jonathan Swift. As leaders, we need to be able not to just see our business in 6 months or in a year, but be able to visualize where our companies will be in 5 to 10 years. This is a good example from Simon Sinek, where he visited the engineers for both Microsoft and Apple. So this is what happened. When he met the Microsoft engineers, they were boasting about their new smartphone and how it's going to be the best technology on the market. But when he met with the Apple engineers, they were talking about what they want to develop in the next 2 to 3 generations of iPhones. Simon approached the Apple engineers and asked them what were their opinion of the Microsoft phone. The Apple engineers responded by saying they showed the Microsoft engineers were correct, but in Apple, they were looking at the next generation and not just the current project. So as we can see with this example, it's important to not only look at what you're currently doing, but have a vision. What are you going to do in the next couple of years? In the next 3 slides, I will help guide you to better understand uncertain times. With that, let's have a look. Uncertain times. Changing work practices. Leadership matters more in a world of uncertainty. Practices that were 50 years ago won't apply in today's work world. The world of work is changing fast, and the pace of change is impacting the way managers and leaders need to approach companies. Pace of change. The pace of change is increasing. Technology, for example, is changing how we live and how we work. Political events. Governments are setting regulations in place to guide businesses. These regulations will help to protect previously disadvantaged parties. All of the changes lead to companies having to rethink the way in which they conduct business. Political policies, cultural and societal norms. This looks at new working practices, emerging technologies, flexible working patterns, and multi-generational teams that are directly influencing how we learn and how we lead. At the same time, businesses must be more socially aware of how they go about creating value for society and their shareholders. Changing business strategies. This means that companies are creating value that is about not only today but about the future. It is smart, inclusive, and responsible. Continuing on, we will look at sustainable value. Businesses today have to rethink what is sustainability. What will you do to continue your business strategy within the next 10 to 15 years? Shared values. Shared values is what we are doing to be good to our customers, our shareholders, and our employees. Lastly, is the business shaping society? What does this shift mean for the practice of leadership? Well, leadership today cannot ignore political events, economic policies, changing business strategies, and culture and societal norms. They need to know how to respond through the way they go about their business and in the ways the company benefits from these norms. Far from being a source of cost, it is now a central way of creating value. So the question is, how do leaders create long-term sustainable value that is seen as positive for everyone, society, and shareholders? Let's look at more topics related to uncertain times. Capacity of adaptability. Leaders today is about understanding the need and preparing for change. Leaders understand the importance of this context. To be a leader, it is to build the capacity of adaptability. It can be a summarization by the phrase, what got us here and what is going to get us where we need to be. To thrive in the future environment, successful leaders scan the environment to determine pending changes and new opportunities. This is from Ron Haysford. What got us here won't get us there. This really comes down to the true growth mindset. Businesses face challenges now differently than they did in history. So many comes down to building value for their customers, employees, and shareholders. This is how we think of problem solving. You can see that everything in business is solving problems, from initial products or service ideas to how to manufacture or provide them, to build a quality workforce to keep its production and sustainability for the long term. Everything about the business is about problem solving. So how can leaders add value? Well, we have a few different ways. With agility, foresight to spot change, anticipate what is going to come next and lead with that anticipation. Being authentic, lead with confidence and have the courage to stand up and lead the change. Talent, harness the power of the people around you. People are the most important asset we have in any company. Sustainability, social responsibility by balancing results with concern for a greater good. So here we have 4 key areas for leaders to have a long-term vision. How they can add value is by being agile, being authentic, looking at the talent around them, and looking for a sustainability. Here we have a quote from the Guardian Sustainable Business Leader of the Year. "You have to walk it. You have to live it. It can't be an add-on. All the standard CSR stuff handling over a big check once a year, it's all well and good. But unless you embed it into your company and culture, it becomes part of what your business is. Then 9 times out of 10, it's lip service. And what's the point of that?" So with that in mind, let's go have a look at what are the challenges facing leaders each day, external challenges, how to cope. So we will look at being proactive, being creative. Make sure that you have the resources and look for opportunities to collaborate. It's almost impossible to imagine a situation where a leader doesn't have to cope with an external challenge. To some extent, the measures of any leader is how well they deal with the constant succession of crises and minor annoyances that threaten the mission of the group. Be proactive, be creative. Make sure that you understand how to use the resources. Then let's have a look at internal challenges, how to overcome these limitations. Leadership exposes us to limitations. In many cases, good leaders have to overcome these limitations in order to transmit and follow their vision. Challenges are constant, be aware. When something new is about to start, when something is about to end, and by definition, that means change is coming. This can mean it is tough and transition is needed. So we need to be ready at any time for those challenges and those changes. With all that information in place, let's take a quick break and look at a sneak peek coming up next lesson. Coming up soon, in Lesson 8, we will explore how leaders can empower employees with innovation and creativity. We've learned about these terms a lot during the last couple of lessons. In Lesson 8, we will give you the knowledge and the skill to use these empowerment tactics. Empowerment will now have to wait as we move back into topic number 2. Here we go with leading a multi-generational environment. A quote by Susan A. Murphy, PhD. "For the first time in modern history, workplace demographics now span over 4 generations. Meaning the 20-year-old new hires can find themselves working side by side with colleagues who are older than they are by 50 years or even more. Let's have a look at the different generations we find in the workplace. First off, baby boomers. They comprise about 25% of the US workforce. Trained as visionaries, they grew up post-World War II in that era. Parents who had lived through a global depression and World War believed with all their hearts that life would be better in the next generation. This belief was so persuasive that in Time magazine awarded its Best Man of the Year in 1967 to the boomer generation, then 25 and under. Let's have a look at Generation X. Here we see they account for 33% of the US labor force. Named by Canadian novelist Douglas Coupland, this generation always defined labels. As children, Generation X heard parents and teachers worrying aloud about recession, inflation, and stagnation. They watched leaders like President Nixon fall from grace. The mood of this era was caution. The role of women around the world began to change, and many of the mothers started to work outside of the home. These children became more independent and they started to learn how to take care of themselves. Here we have the millennial generation. This is the fastest growing cohort. Millennials make up 35% of the workforce. This era was shaped with the beginning of a major change around the world, the end of apartheid and the fall of the Soviet Union. This generation grew up with technology. 20% of the college students surveyed in 2002 said they first started using computers when they were between 5 and 8 years old. Millennials tend to feel comfortable discussing previously thought as adult issues. They like to discuss domestic violence, AIDS, marital infidelity with parents and with their teachers. They grew up with a much more casual exposure to multiculturalism from a very early age. Members of the millennial generation tend to be goal-orientated. Many were required to serve time volunteering in order to graduate from high school. They exhibit high levels of social concern and responsibility. They arrive at the job with higher expectations than any other generation. With a click of a mouse, they can notify thousands of cohorts about which companies fall and match their ideals. Lastly, let's have a look at Generation Z. Generation Z makes up 5% of the US workforce. They are currently between 4 and 24 years old. They grew up with a hyper-connected world where they use smartphones and they use this method to communicate. On average, they spend about 3 hours a day on their mobile devices. Now that we've had a look at all of the different generations, let's look at the challenges facing leaders leading today. Here we see from 80 to 80, matching the needs of expectations of millennials, Generation Z, and the baby boomers. Negative stereotypes will include maybe someone too eager or stuck in their ways. Picture the scene. You have a fresh-faced graduate working alongside a 60-year-old colleague on the same project. These two employees work for the same employer and have seriously different expectations and the ways in which they view the workplace. What motivates these workers? Much of the published generation research focuses on the differences between millennial generations and the other generations. The millennial generation of workers would focus on workplace flexibility, work-life balance, and the opportunity for overseas assignments for financial rewards. Due to this high expectation, this can potentially lead to stereotyping. Older workers may perceive millennials as entitled, tech-obsessed, or too eager to challenge norms, while millennial employees could see previous generations as being stuck in their ways and difficult to train. Organizations need to take the steps to ensure that managers overcome their unconscious bias because generations differ, and this can present positive or negative biases. Now I have a question for you guys. What is your experience working with older people? Or on the other side, are young people more difficult to manage? Can an old dog learn new tricks? So these are the type of questions we need to ask ourselves to understand our bias and how we perceive the different generations. So what is the benefit of having this multi-generation workforce? Well, we have quite a few. Talent of all ages. Teams can attract and retain talent from all different ages, which means there is more experience, more knowledge, and the team can learn from each other. Increase market share. The team can gain and maintain greater market share because its members reflect a multi-generational market. More perspective. Decisions are stronger because they are broad-based with multiple perspectives. More innovation and creativity. The teams are more creative because you have different experiences. All of this leads the company to create better innovation and creativity. Relate to a diverse public. The team can meet the needs of the diverse public and relate to them more effectively because the company represents the market share. With that, let's take a few seconds to answer a question. What is the biggest obstacle your generation is currently facing? You can either answer the question in the Morpheus or you can take the time to write down your answer. This is a good exercise to take to your team to see which obstacles are overlapping. Think of a question that you can ask your teams to better understand their needs. Then, moving on, let's look at what can leaders do. Leaders can educate employees on different generational issues. As we mentioned with the question before, it's a great way for people to relate to each other because there are overlapping issues that everyone can understand. Prevent brain drain through knowledge capture and sharing. Make sure that the different generations are able to collaborate, share ideas, and that experience is being passed on. Promote fairness and equal opportunity. Make sure that the company has a strategy in place to ensure that everyone has the same opportunities regardless of your age, your race, or your sex. Let's look at number 4. Recruitment should be refined. Recruitment messages geared to each generation will attract across the age spectrum. The HR part of the company will have to define which generation they would want to attract and create the recruitment plan that fits that need. Look for the right talent. Targeted recruitment for mature workers gives employees an advantage when it comes to acquiring the right people. Attract young talent. Attracting young talent is crucial to ensure the future of the business, as this becomes part of succession planning. Age diversity. Commitment to age diversity builds a company's reputation as an employer of choice. Let's apply this knowledge. Which generation is currently the largest community in your workplace? Do you guys have statistics on this, or can you broadly state which generation you find most in your workplace? Thank you all for taking the time to answer. Let's look at acquiring a multicultural mindset. Here we have adapting to new cultures. Firstly, we have serve the company by adapting to the host culture. All experts in international business agree that to succeed in a global business, managers need to be flexible and respond positively and effectively to practices and values that may be dramatically different from what they are accustomed to. This requires the ability to be open to ideas and the opinions of others. Lead with humility and patience. Humility has been a topic in so many of our lessons, and this becomes part of our culture and working with different generations. Humility can be coupled with patience. With positions, the leader to advance the corporate vision and develop new leaders in a safe space. This is confirmed by Guy McLeod, the president of Airbus China. When people arrive, they want to change things. But making quick moves in the wrong way isn't the right way to do things. You need to have patience, patience, patience. You need to make a long-term strategy and stick to it. Align the company vision and national culture. In order for a company to be successful in that market, the best approach is to align the company vision and the national culture. This means that the company is looking at the cultural needs of the country and the community. This means the company is more likely to win market share because of this alignment. Let's look at these three topics more in depth. Serve the company by adapting to the host culture. Adapt national cultural norms to the target culture. The leader will be successful if he or she is able to adapt to the national culture norms of the target market. You have to listen. It is needed to listen to the market and the country that you are operating in. Don't come with preconceived ideas. It is important to set your own bias aside in order to meet the needs of the culture that you are operating within. Try to understand the customer and the employees. It is great to do market research to understand their needs, understand the culture, and then use that to set up a vision for the future. Lead with humility and patience. Show sincerity and learning the culture. When I worked in Vietnam, it was very important to be culturally accurate. We had to give the employees cultural training to ensure that they could work in these centers effectively. You can do so by learning a new language, understanding the culture, and applying that within the business operations. Causes of failure. Without humility and the patience to learn the new culture, the company can fail when they do not take the culture needs into account. Next, we see serve the company by adapting to the host culture. Don't lose what's unique. It's important for the company to retain what is unique about them, but also changing slightly to meet the cultural needs. This means you are keeping your corporate identity, your vision, your mission, everything in place, but adapting it to the culture that you are operating within. Don't lose well-known business practices in favor of cultural compliance. Well, this is a tricky one. Because we want to align the company vision, mission, and our marketing strategy, that does not mean we have to change the way in which our company operates. So our internal business practices can stay the same because it meets our corporate identity and the culture that we want to create for our company. Here we see challenges leading with diversity. We have quite a few. Behaviors. Diverse workforces will behave differently. Understand why people behave differently than expected. Our behavior is always an expression of our values, so when we are managing people from a different culture, you have to adapt to their norms and values in order to understand their behavior. Frustration. If behavior makes sense, we accept it, but if it does not, we get frustrated. Avoid getting frustrated and angry. Sometimes that means rejecting that frustration and looking to why the company or the culture is doing something in a certain way. This, however, can lead to challenges because we have to challenge the way we think and accept something new. Efficiency and decision making. Getting to a desired end will be very different for different people. Some people act fast, while others take time to make a decision. People who like to make decisions fast consider those who take long to be inefficient. But research has shown that people who take individual decisions more often have to redo their decisions than people who make a collective decision and take time to understand something. So the collective decision making might take longer, but it can also mean it is of better quality. Lack of proper training or management can create a culture diversity team that struggles. Cross-culture managers feel that they need the right tools to manage that team. Managing diversity is an important add-on to the management skills that you have. Culturally diverse teams have a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities. How to motivate and demotivate. What motivates one group may demotivate another. Motivation is based on the culture, and we need managers to look at what those needs are. When you expand to other cultures and you bring along your motivation system, you might experience a decline in efficiency and employee satisfaction. That is why it is needed to survey your employees, understand their motivation, and based on the culture, make the changes to ensure that the employees are getting the motivation that they need for the company and for their roles. Let's have a look at leaders embrace a diversity mindset. So here we have a few options. Increase productivity, creativity, and innovation. McKinsey, in their analysis of diversity and whether it had positive effects, noted that authentically diverse companies are 35% more likely to outperform non-diverse companies. Diversity becomes a lens for looking at, identifying, developing, and advancing talent. So when they think about recruitment, they need to look at the minority recruitment as well. Education of recruiters is key to promote diversity in the workplace. Leaders need to know how they can build accountability into the system regarding managers to ensure that creativity and diversity is promoted. When we have more people from a diverse backgrounds, creativity and innovation can grow. This leads to more productivity and people working in a better work environment. Globalization. Local market knowledge and insight makes a business more competitive and profitable. You can take that local market and extend it to a global market where you can export and share the knowledge and products. Gain perspective. It is very important for managers and leaders to gain perspective by leading with diversity. You better understand the people that you work with, you better understand the culture, and with that you will better understand the market in which you are operating. And discrimination. This is a very important topic for a lot of people. It is important to have a company that is socially responsible, where you're accepting the responsibility to be more diverse, which means different sexes, different races, different backgrounds, because the company is growing and wants to be more diverse. I know this is a very difficult topic for a lot of people because it does not only come down to a manager or leader. It comes down to the country you are working in, the culture you are working in, and what the company wants to do with this diversity. So before we end this lesson, I have 2 challenges I want each and every one of you to take on and really try to do. Speak to employees from different generations and seek to understand their needs and motivation at work. This is a great way to survey your employees, understand what they need and the motivation. You will see a lot of overlapping issues and motivation that you can really use to better the work environment. Do research to better understand each generation. There is companies dedicated to creating research that we can use in our companies. You can look at the research for your country, for the globe, to make sure that you really understand the topics to better apply the knowledge. As we end this lesson, I just want to remind you guys that in Lesson 8, we will explore empowerment and using innovation and creativity. Please embrace every challenge and take the time to evaluate yourself and your company. Are you a diverse company? Are you applying multi-generational steps? And how can you improve understanding and motivating your teams? I want to thank each and every one of you for attending Lesson 7. These are the building blocks to creating a better company, being a better leader and manager, and creating a better future for everyone. Thank you all.